The Velthary Council had executed 47 species across the known galaxy. They were precise about it. Clinical. They would select one representative from the offending civilization, usually someone young, someone small, someone who looked afraid, and make an example of them in the grand amphitheater of Varith Prime. Broadcast across 17 star systems. A reminder of who held power in this quadrant of the universe. They had never once chosen wrong. Until the day they chose Nova. Nova Chun was 23 years old, a doctoral student in xenobiology at MIT's orbital campus, and she had been aboard the research vessel Persephone when the Velthary warships surrounded them without warning. She was also, though no one on the Council's selection committee knew this, a child of Detroit's collapsed infrastructure zones, raised by a grandmother who worked 3 jobs, who had watched her cousin die of a preventable illness because the insurance claim was denied, who had clawed her way into academia through sheer feral refusal to accept what the universe considered her assigned ceiling. The committee had selected her because she was young, because she was small, 5 feet 2, slight, dark-eyed, because she had looked frightened when the soldiers boarded. She had been frightened. She was also already calculating. Dante, the Velthary fleet commander, observed the human through the holding cell's transparent barrier with the detached curiosity of a taxonomist examining an insect. She hasn't spoken in 6 hours, his aide reported. Fear response, Dante said, common in pre-execution subjects. The smaller species often retreat inward. He turned away. He had an amphitheater to prepare. What Dante did not see, because he had stopped watching, was the moment Nova finished memorizing the rotation cycle of the guard posted outside her cell, or the moment she tested the molecular bonding of the cell floor with the heel of her boot, or the moment she tore a strip from her jacket lining and began, methodically, to braid it into something that was not a fashion accessory. She had read every xenobiology paper ever published on Velthary musculature. She knew their bone density. She knew their pressure points. She was a scientist. Scientists observed. Scientists prepared. The amphitheater held 60,000 beings. Nova was brought out in restraint cuffs, standard Velthary issue, designed for species with 2 arm joints. Humans had 3 functional pivot points in each arm. This was not in the Velthary xenology database because they had never considered humans worth studying in depth. Nova had known this for 4 hours. The executor, a towering creature in ceremonial armor, read the charges in the common tongue. Humanity had failed to submit navigational data for Velthary fleet expansion. Humanity had ignored 3 summons. Humanity had, according to the charges, demonstrated insufficient deference. The crowd murmured in anticipation. Nova stood very still and thought about her grandmother. You don't get to be small, her grandmother had told her once, after a school administrator had tried to redirect Nova from the advanced science track. You don't get to be small just because they want you to be. You get to be exactly as big as you actually are. The executor raised the ceremonial blade. Nova moved. The restraint cuffs hit the floor in the same moment she was already behind the executor, her braided cord around the being's neck. Not to strangle. She wasn't trying to kill anyone yet, just to control. Her feet planted in a stance her cousin Marcus had taught her in a parking lot in 2031 when the neighborhood got bad. 60,000 beings went silent. Dante turned from his elevated platform. The human, the small frightened human they had selected, was holding the executor at bay with improvised cordage and what appeared to be a 2-inch fragment of her own restraint cuffs locking mechanism, pressed with surgical precision to the nerve cluster beneath the executor's left mandible. Tell them to back up, Nova said quietly. Her voice carried. She had spent 3 years presenting research to hostile academic panels. She knew how to project. Dante stared. I know you speak English, Nova continued. I heard you using it with your aide. So tell them. Back up. I don't want to hurt anyone. But I need you to understand something first. Dante said nothing for 4 seconds. Then he raised one hand, and the guard stopped moving. Speak, he said. Nova didn't move from her position. She kept her eyes on Dante. You picked me because I looked scared, she said. I was scared. That's true. But here's what you don't know about humans. We grew up on a planet that was actively trying to kill us. Ice ages. Supervolcanoes. Megafauna with 6-inch teeth. Bacteria that could rewrite our cellular structure. Viruses that jumped species faster than we could name them. We didn't have natural armor. We didn't have enhanced healing or pack-bonding pheromones or even particularly good night vision. She let that sit. We had pattern recognition and spite, she said. For 200,000 years, every single thing on our planet was bigger, faster, or more venomous than us, and we are still here. We are still here because when something tries to kill a human, we don't just react. We study. We adapt. We remember. The amphitheater was so quiet she could hear the ventilation systems. I've been on your ship for 6 hours, Nova said. I know 17 ways to disable your life support using only components found in a standard holding cell. I know your guard rotation. I know that your command deck has a pressure seal vulnerability at junction 9, because the alloy you used has a thermal expansion coefficient that creates microfractures at sustained temperatures above 340 Kelvin, and your engine exhaust runs at 380. She paused. I ran the numbers in my head. I had time. Dante looked at her for a very long moment. You are one individual, he said finally. Unarmed. I'm a student, Nova corrected. I'm 23 years old, and I am one of the least prepared humans you could have taken. I'm a biologist. You want to think about what happens if you take an engineer? A soldier? A person who grew up somewhere worse than I did. She let the question breathe. There are 8 billion of us. We've been in space for less than 40 years, and we've already figured out 17 of your 17 guard rotations, your alloy vulnerabilities, and the fact that your commander speaks English but pretended not to for the first 6 hours. Dante went very, very still. You're not a threat to be executed, Nova said. Her voice wasn't angry. It was almost gentle. You're a variable you don't understand yet. And the thing about humans is, we can be very, very good neighbors. We want to be good neighbors. We built international coalitions on a planet where we were actively killing each other for 10,000 years. We figured out cooperation. We figured out treaties. She slowly, very slowly, released the cord from around the executor's neck. She stepped back. She held her hands open. Or, she said, you can keep trying to make an example of us. She looked at Dante with dark, calm eyes. We have a saying back home. You can learn it the easy way or the hard way. I'm offering you the easy way. Right now, in front of 60,000 witnesses. The execution was canceled. There were those on the Velthary Council who called it weakness. Dante did not argue with them, because he was already pulling every intelligence file on humanity he could access, and what he was reading was making something cold settle in his chest. The wars they had fought among themselves, the plagues they had survived, the famines and the floods and the sheer grinding persistence of a species that had no right to exist past the Bronze Age and had somehow, stubbornly, impossibly, made it to the stars. He found a historical human document called the Geneva Convention. They had rules, he realized. They had looked at the worst things they were capable of doing to each other and written rules about it. That was somehow the most frightening thing of all. Nova was returned to the Persephone 3 days later with a formal diplomatic communique and a request to open trade negotiations. Her supervisor met her at the airlock. He looked like he hadn't slept. What did you do? He asked. Nova considered the question. Science, she said. Mostly. She walked past him toward her bunk, already composing the paper in her head. Observe behavioral triggers in Velthary command structure under applied social pressure. A preliminary field report. She thought her grandmother would be proud. Somewhere in the Velthary fleet, Dante filed a single notation in the official xenology record. Human classification update. Threat level, reclassified. Note, do not mistake stillness for surrender. Do not mistake small for safe. Do not, under any circumstances, give them 6 hours unsupervised.